Hi, I am Victor and I'm a developer of Realm, an action roguelike game focused on fast-paced melee combat. And for the past month I have been working on creating atmosphere for my game. I have improved the visual side of the game, changed the art style, and made the ground levels of the new and first official biome of the game, which is swamps. Anyways, to show you all the changes and improvements, I will start right from the beginning. Since I am making the swamp biome, I needed some new art for swamp theme objects, so I started off by drawing a tree. It has these hung branches and leaves, and I also made some art style changes to it by making the shadows darker and trying out the new shading technique called hatching. At first I thought that the hatching would make the art style less cartoony, because I want a darker atmosphere and not what it was until now, this a bit cartoony looking art style, bright saturated colors, not much contrast between them. But I was wrong about the hatching, it just made the art more messy, and the noise it was creating on screen attracted too much attention to itself, which is a huge issue because I want players to be focused on enemies and their attacks and not on the trees and beautiful nature. I drew a second version of the tree in which I removed the hatching, kept the darker shadows, and made changes to the outlines. The outlines are now thicker next to darker colors and thinner next to brighter colors. Back in the days when I used to draw comics, I used to do outlines this way, and I thought that it could also work for this game, and I think it really does because it makes the outlines more dynamic and less cartoony, which once again was my goal. Then with the new and improved art style I made some grass and a mushroom so that the swamp environment wasn't so empty. Next I wanted to add some extra life to the environment, so I have created a bunch of new stuff. First I have added insects like flies so that there are living beings other than just enemies and the player. They were kind of weird to make because I struggled with making their movement look natural and also keeping them from moving outside of their defined zone. But in the end I managed, and I even made a little animation for it, which fun fact is the only hand-drawn animation in the game. Along with the flies I have also decided to add crows because I had a really cool idea that the crows would fly towards corpses and just chill there and probably eat them. I made multiple designs of the crow, and the one you are currently seeing was the one I liked the most. It was difficult to design because it had to be small, so I couldn't add in much detail, but it ended up looking pretty well. And when I saw the crow in game, it got me thinking I could be something more than just a visual thing, and that it could be a pet. A pet crow that would sometimes attack enemies, could give you information of the surrounding land, by which I mean it would give you information on the map, and for good measure, it would still eat corpses. However, I didn't work on it in this devlog because making things like this requires a lot of time. The second thing I have added to make the environment more alive was wind. Wind in 2D games is usually done by just making an animation where, for example, the tree is rotating from left to right. But I wanted something more complex where I could change the strength and direction of the wind, and for that wind to be then applied to every specified object, and for that to function I needed to make the animations co-generated. These are the results. You can see the trees and grass slowly going from left to right, but when I increase the wind's strength and change its direction to go right, there is a transition where it smoothly goes from the original to the new wind. The trees and grass are now rotating only to the right side, plus the leaves falling from the sky also started going right. Next I was thinking about what could make this environment more like a swamp, and I realized that there were missing lakes, ponds and just generally water. I have never before made water in any of my games, so this was a challenge to make. Originally I wanted to use shaders like all the cool people do to turn this still image into a water, however there was just a small issue. I have almost zero experience in making shaders, definitely not enough for a water shader, so I have decided to do it my own way via code. I made these moving waves use sprite masks so that the shadows are not visible on the water surface, and when the player or enemies are in the water, part of their body is cut off by another sprite mask and this wave thing appears. I like the way I have done it because while it is simple, it still looks good enough, and the water's simplicity makes it optimized, reliable and easy to work with, so you can definitely expect water in the swamp biome and also in some rare cases in other biomes. I'm also planning to make it so that the water slows down whoever is in it, which would offer a lot of space for interesting game design, like making an enemy that would be able to walk across the water without being slowed down, and another enemy that could only move inside the water, sort of like a fish, so there is a lot of potential. Next I improved the ambient light, which is shining in the top right corner, by making it cast shadows. I have already attempted doing this in the past, but back then I made the shadows be casted by both obstacles and also entities, which was too distracting and I wasn't able to make it look good. But this time I had more experience with Unity's light system, so I have managed through some tricks to make the shadows look nicer. After finishing the ambient light, I couldn't choose between two versions of it. The first was glowing brightly and the second wasn't glowing at all. It was just casting shadows and that cast the environment to have much deeper contrast. I have asked for opinions on Reddit and I got surprising amount of replies. Most people like the first one and some also recommending lowering the light's brightness a bit, which I agreed on, so I did that. After posting, I realized that I could make a day and night cycle where it would transition between the bright lights and darkness, which I will probably do. However, I am worried about the player's ability to see being negatively affected during the night. Anyways, I really appreciate the feedback, it helps me to make this game better and to see things from another perspective. I have also messed around a bit with the post-processing to make the colors have higher contrast, added some bloom and a vignette to make everything pop out, and I must say it makes a huge difference. Certainly the scene without the post-processing would just feel flat. Crafting the atmosphere for the swamp was a lot of work, but even with everything new, it still felt unfinished because the rooms were surrounded by nothing, only void. I went ahead and created a background, which had to be made very specifically so that it works with the way the player travels between rooms. This is what it looks like in the game and I must say it is so satisfying. It is also kind of cool to see it work in the editor. Along the background I have added some fog just to give it that extra mood. Breakable objects have been part of my game for a long time, but until now, if you attack them, nothing would really happen. They were boring and it annoyed me to the point where I have decided to make changes. Here are wooden spikes, a new breakable object, and if you hit them, they react. I know, amazing, right? Anyways, it is a lot more satisfying to destroy them now because they rotate in the direction they were hit, flash white and even change their sprites to a damaged version of it. From now on, every breakable object will behave like this. What I have done in this devlog is already enough, but I still wanted to do two small improvements. First is the feedback when the player is damaged. It was quickly done and so it did not feel right, so I made it smoother and made it last for the duration of player's invisibility after getting hit, which is 1 second. This way you have some visual indicator for how long the invisibility lasts. I also added extra feedback when you have only 1 HP to express that you are about to die, which is not cool. The last thing I have done was an extremely important fix for a bug I found while playtesting. Basically, when two projectiles hit the player at the same time, in the same frame, the player would take 2 damages instead of just 1, because for some reason the invisibility was activated after that. To fix it, I made an extra layer of protection for the player, which allows him to be damaged only once in a frame. That is everything for this devlog. If you want to try out this game for yourself, you can download a free demo on itch.io, link is in the description. I will also try to be more active and post small regular updates on other social media, so if you are interested in following the game's progress more closely and maybe even give me some feedback, you can follow me on Instagram where I will be the most active. Thanks for watching and bye!